Hey, it's been a while, but now we're finally ready to tackle the latest release in the Zelda series. And we're starting off with the enemies.
Breath of the Wild had a huge world to fill up with enemies and monsters, but even though there were tons of these to keep you busy fighting, there wasn't really a huge variety of enemy types.
The game lacks classic enemies like Redeads, Pose, Lifelikes and so on, and we guess it's because the world is filled with wildlife as well. Still, we have rounded up the enemies we find fitting for these kinds of lists that we normally do for each game. Please notice that even though the game has an enemy come in many different colors and with different strengths, we list the enemy type in general in this video. Also, please notice that these videos do not take any DLC into consideration. The lists for this game were all made before any DLC was released.
So with that said, we're the owners of Triforce, I'm owner 2.
And I'm owner 1, and this is our top 5 coolest and weirdest enemies in Breath of the Wild.
The first enemy we ever saw for this video game was the Guardian Stalker, and while I think this one is kinda cool,
But I don't.
right, but the Guardians in general are kinda weird to us. It makes sense for the story and setting of this world, and while we actually could see this one working in Skyward Sword as well, we're just not fond of high-tech things like this.
We're not saying that it's a downright bad choice to have robotic enemies and technology like this in Zelda games, but we prefer it when they stay with creatures and other things that feel natural in a medieval setting.
They're all over the game and have a lot of different varieties, and for the most part, we just find them weird for a Zelda game. But hey, that's just our preference.
Besides, that piano music that plays when you encounter them just sounds so comical to us.
The Wizrobe is one of our favorite enemies in the series. Sadly, the Breath of the Wild version is one of the weirder ones we've seen.
They don't look terrible, and even though they are kinda adorable in some sense, how they just prance around in the air, they are more on the weirder side.
We prefer the 2D versions much more, the ones that wear a robe and a classic wizard's hat. These hoods they're wearing make them look so weird, and the creature underneath the robes just look weird and creepy.
They come in different colors and elemental varieties, but they pretty much look the same. We're slightly disappointed with this one, and it lands the number 4 spot on our weirdest list.
The sort of main enemy, like the story relevant enemy you find in this game, is the Guardian. However, the most common you'll find yourself fighting is probably the MOBLIN. They've never really looked that cool, and the ones in this game is no exception.
They're not cool looking or anything. They face you with their huge snouts, big ears, and just at times very annoying presence.
They just seem like a simple bunch, and we're just not fond of how they act, sound, or look. Number 3 weirdest on this list.
If this was a list of the most annoying enemies, this one would definitely be number 1. But even though they're mostly annoying, they are pretty weird as well.
The OCTOROKs in this game really do look like an OCTOROK, and that's fine. The water OCTOROKs sure aren't much weirder than others we've seen in the series, but now there are forest OCTOROKs too, that can move super fast underground. This just got a bit weirder.
And it gets so much weirder when you find OCTOROKs with freaking treasure chests on their heads. Yeah, they can fool you into thinking that you just found a treasure chest, only to then realize that one of these ugly things are behind them.
Rock OCTOROK, Snow OCTOROK, they're sort of weird too. But the forest and especially the treasure ones make the OCTOROK land the number 2 spot here.
The Choo-Choo has always been a pretty weird enemy. Others find them pretty cute. We agree to some extent in this game. When they're small, they are kinda adorable with their huge googly eyes.
However, when they merge and grow larger, the eyes aren't really that huge and googly anymore. When their mass grow, the eyes don't, and it just makes the Choo-Choo's hair look super weird.
We do think the electric and fire choo-choo look kinda cool because of their elements, but that's not enough to save them when they too just look incredibly weird as they merge, which is why the choo-choo is our #1 weirdest enemy in Breath of the Wild.
We weren't sure if these were weird or not, but they definitely look adorable. The PEBBLITs are these small versions of the Talus, and they look pretty badass in their elemental forms, and especially the Igneo one.
And it's just funny how they wiggle after you and that you actually can pick them up without getting hurt. With the standard ones anyway. And after you've eliminated the heat or cold from the elemental ones.
Plus, they drop some ore. That's always useful.
The LIZALFOS is a common and oftentimes very cool enemy in the series. And we don't think the versions in this game are any less either.
Even though they are sometimes tricky, even at the border of annoying to fight in this game, they are pretty unique. We're not sure if the chameleon style is any cooler than previous versions, but at least that allows them to camouflage themselves in this game, and that is pretty cool.
They might jump at you from anywhere without you noticing them, and that is something. In addition to these though, we also appreciate the skeleton version of them in the STALIZALFOS.
Of course we had to include some form of skeleton enemy on this list, and we think both types of these are cool. Even if the chameleon look of them isn't as cool as previous versions, then the skeleton versions surely weighs up for it, cause they look really cool.
In addition, whenever we face the fire and ice breath versions of these, it's just so satisfying to take them out with the opposite element. Swoop! All gone.
The moblins in the series have been pretty weird and ugly for the most part, with the once in Ocarina of Time being a huge exception, but the Breath of the Wild version sure looks pretty cool as well.
They're huge, they're tough, and my favorite thing about them, if they don't find a weapon to use, they can pick up one of the bokoblins nearby to throw it at you. How hilarious is that?
Just like with the LIZALFOS, we include the Stal version of the moblins here as well. They also look really cool, and we like how big they are.
The moblins have a strong presence in this game in our opinion. They're often fun to fight, both because they're tough and threatening at times, and especially because of how creative they are with finding other ways for them to fight their enemies. The enemy we were most interested in seeing more from before the game's release was the YIGA people. From the Switch presentation trailer, they looked very interesting with how they wore the Sheikah symbol upside down. And we saw the Blademaster, this huge warrior that really interested us. We were slightly disappointed in some ways, but the YIGA clan was still really cool.
What kind of disappointed us was that there are only 2 different kinds of enemies in the YIGA clan, looking away from their leader, of course. Still, what we got was cool enough for them to make the 2nd place. You have the huge Blademasters, who just look badass and are pretty tough and fun to fight. One thing though, what is with them and bananas? It's hilarious how much they love them.
The Blademaster is not the only one obsessed with bananas, as the FOOTSOLDIER often like to try and sell Link bananas while being disguised. Looking away from the banana thing, this is also one reason why we love the YIGA as an enemy. They disguise themselves as common travelers and start attacking you after a conversation with them. We think both that and how both types can appear out of nowhere is pretty cool.
So they look awesome, they're fun to fight, and we also find it very helpful how the FOOTSOLDIERs often leave a good dose of rupees behind. Even though we were a bit disappointed as this clan had a lot of potential, we still think they're awesome and that they deserve their spot.
Only one enemy could be cooler than the YIGA, and that is the Lynel. I mean, holy crap, look at them! The Lynel has been a really cool enemy in previous 2D games, and I personally always thought they were so cool in games like A Link to the Past. This is the first time they've brought them into a 3D game, and holy crap, they look awesome!
They're huge, they're fast, they're powerful, They're badass and they are downright intimidating. They have such a long range of noticing you, and when you're weak, you don't want their attention. At least we don't.
The Lynels look amazing and are so tough to fight, but often also very enjoyable. It's especially rewarding to defeat them, both with what items they drop and just a general feeling of taking one of them down. It's also really fun that you can try to mount them, but it rarely goes right. It's pretty much like riding a mechanical bull.
We don't feel the need to say much more. Just the appearance alone is pretty much enough for it to make the top of the coolest list. But the pure badassness of the enemy in total makes the Lynel the clear winner in this category. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.